This is the story of a man and a woman. That man and woman. They're about to take a journey into the deepest, darkest depths of cinema. All the way to the Stuckmann zone.
Well guys, this is the much hyped scary movie video that I've been talking to you guys about. This is my fiance Sam, if you have not seen her in videos before. What we're going to be doing is taking you guys through a journey of some of our favorite scary films that we like to watch this time of year. They may not necessarily be the cliched classic picks. You're not going to see certain films on here. If your favorite film isn't on here, we apologize. This is just kind of our list of things we like to watch this season, this scary time of year. It's a lot of fun.
It's not always just about the scary too. Sometimes it's about the slightly nostalgia factor too behind some of our picks.
One of the things we have done for you guys is we have filmed various skits as well for certain films. Not every film we talk about will have a skit, but we have about 3 or 4 for you guys in this video.
I'm a total geek out. I love doing this kind of stuff. It makes my holidays happier.
The first film we're going to be talking about is a classic. It's a film from the 60s. It is black and white. And it is a film that many laud as one of the best suspense films ever made. So please enjoy our skit.
How'd you enjoy that? I made my appearance quite known in this last skit.
Yes, nice shower scene. That was fun to film. Yeah, but anyway, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is, as I said, a classic movie, and it's a movie that parts of it, I will be completely honest with you guys, there are certain aspects of it that are slightly dated, and that's comes with the territory. It's like 53 years old.
Oh yeah.
From that perspective, the film holds up extremely well, though, and I think really the character of Norman Bates is really what makes this movie better than your average serial killer-esque movie, because you don't think it's like that as you're watching the film unless you, of course, know of the various famous twists and scenes.
For the original piece that it is, it did push the boundaries when it came out. By far.
To agree with what you're saying, to me the movie really starts when she arrives at the Bates Motel.
Yeah.
To me that's when the movie starts, because up until then you're getting to know her character, you're learning vital information about her, you're seeing that she wants to escape and steal, $40,000. But really once she has that conversation with Norman Bates in that room with the birds and all the taxidermy, that's where the movie really starts to get creepy. The addition of Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates that really propels that movie into something great. And of course the shower scene, the classic shower scene.
Speaking of birds, taxidermy, I got one downstairs that my mom has for us. That you might like it as a present for us.
A boy's best friend is his mother. Opening titles back then were always so long, and they were just these really long cross-dissolving images of like everyone in the movie ever. And Psycho was one of the first movies to really kind of revolutionize the way opening credits were. Like they made opening credit sequences, because back then it was like, oh, just put the credits. But Psycho took the credits, and since the movie started with such intense music and then got really slow paced after that, because of that intense opening, you're like, something is coming in this movie. Like, it's gonna get intense at some point, because that opening credits makes you feel that way. My one problem with the entire movie is the psychiatrist scene where he basically explains everything to the audience as if we're idiots. Now, nowadays we're more savvy as audience members. We've seen more twist endings. We grow to expect that type of thing. In the 60s, though, audiences were blown away by that, and I understand why they use the big explanation scene, but nowadays it feels kind of like, yeah, I get it. I don't need you to explain this to me.
Yeah, a lot of the books that I read that are dated before Psycho came out in the murder mystery genres, they're explicit and definitely very graphic, but they do have to spell things out for people a little bit more. In numerous amounts of books I've read, things are a little bit more cut and dry in telling people, unless if you have to figure it out yourself.
But followed by it is the classic scene where he's like, I wouldn't even hurt a fly. And then he looks at the screen with that evil glare. It's perfect.
Leads up into Psycho 2.
Which we're not going to talk about. Well, the next film we haven't filmed a skit for, but it's a film that for you and I think it's more fun. You know, like it's a scary film, but it's also a fun film. And that is...
Sleepy Hollow.
Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. There's a lot of adaptations of it. That's my favorite one and probably the best one. It is definitely the biggest budget one. It's one of the films that I think Johnny Depp was truly great in because nowadays it's like everything he does, he's got like white face paint on all the time.
I was just about to say that. He has no face paint on and he's actually kind of wearing period piece clothing that looks like a normal human being. And he's not a pirate. He's not drunk. He's not walking like an idiot.
Right.
Okay, his character does faint a lot
right.
and scream.
He still has funny quirks to his character.
Well, it's definitely Johnny Depp's style of acting. It's very cliched in his great speeches, his play off words, his quirky innuendos he throws into the character, and maybe making it his own kind of personality in there too.
It's really a Tim Burton movie for sure, and it's perfect, the movie, for him. There's so much gothic imagery in the film. Lots of dark forests and mists all over the place. There's witches and all kinds of things. It's really a perfect movie for him.
It was actually kind of a shock to see a scene in white at the end.
Yeah, you were like, oh wait, color?
Color? It's white. It's not gray.
Right.
There's snow and white buildings and people in white clothing.
For me, this movie is cool because not just the Headless Horseman and the fight scenes and the action scenes, but there's actually a pretty kind of dark and disturbing backstory to Ichabod Crane's youth in this movie where, you know, he witnessed certain things happen with his mother.
And his scars on his hands.
Scars on his hands. For that reason, this movie kind of goes a little bit beyond just the fun, spooky type of movie that it is. It's just a fun adventure type movie set back in 1799 is when it's filmed.
It's a good revenge piece, too, if you really stop to think about
Technically.
it. It's a revenge piece.
Yeah.
All across the board, definitely a revenge piece.
Christopher Walken as the Headless Horseman is pretty entertaining for myself. The next things we're going to be talking about, we're actually going to bunch two things into one category because one of the things we wanted to do was not just present a whole bunch of horror films that, you know, are for 18 plus. We wanted to talk about some films that your entire family can enjoy as well this time of year. The first thing we wanted to talk about is not a film. It is a TV special, and that is Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. To me, this is extremely important for this time of year because it's Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
But no, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin.
I love Charlie Brown. I've grown up with him. I have some of the original comic strips back behind me, actually, in this bookshelf. They've been in all of my reviews. You guys just don't know it. I've always loved Snoopy. I watched the TV show when I was a kid. I've read the comic strips. I was really sad when Charles Schultz died, and I wasn't going to be able to see an original Peanuts comic every Sunday in the paper.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those pieces I look forward to watching every fall. I love Charlie Brown and Snoopy and the little bird.
Woodstock,
yes. Why can I never remember his name? Which is surprising because I had an entire collection of Woodstock toys.
Did you?
Yeah.
We're going to break up now, so see you later.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Woodstock.
I love Woodstock. Woodstock is awesome. But if you guys want to watch something that your entire family can watch, it's only like 26 or 27 minutes long. It's a lot of fun for the whole family. It's got a message in there, kind of. It's enjoyable. It's freaking Peanuts. If you don't like Snoopy, I don't understand you. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't
There's
get
nothing
you.
to not like about Snoopy.
It makes you feel warm. You want to wrap up in a blanket and watch Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just where that's the best place that this television thing
kick
exists.
Off into the holidays.
Right.
I love it.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is also kind of a children-esque like thing, but since it was on in the 90s, most of the kids who are now adults really like it still, and that is the Goosebumps TV show. This show, it's so dumb. It really is. Like, I've watched almost all of it on Netflix. There are so many dumb moments. The same type of things happen in every episode where, like, the first scare is usually a joke. Oh no, what's happening? But it was just all a big joke. There are certain, like, hit point cliches throughout the Goosebumps show, but it is so nostalgic for me because I have a ton of Goosebumps books right behind me. I got a Goosebumps poster right there. I have a lot of the movies still on my VHS tape, which I will from time to time pop into a VCR. Don't judge me.
There's a couple episodes of Goosebumps I remember vividly going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Even though I know I read the book. I still always wondered what direction they were actually going to take that episode in because sometimes they were just a little a little bit different than the book.
Now, I know you told me what your favorite episode was, and that was...
Vampire Breath. For some reason, I always vividly remember this episode as the two kids doing what they're told not to do, going exploring around the house.
Mm-hmm.
They head into a crypt that just opens in their basement.
Right.
Run into a little girl
Yep.
who's supposedly been trapped in that sewer system for God knows how long, and then run into an old man, then turns around and completely goes from being them getting chased and about to get killed by a vampire to them being vampires and the grandfather finding his fangs and getting his vampire breath back. It's just like...
It's pretty awesome.
It's a good
that's
episode.
that's Goosebumps. See, like, they did stuff like that. Like, oh, the kids are going to go in the basement and go on a giant adventure. Because that's how I kind of was as a kid. When I was a kid, I would always go outside and use my imagination quite a bit. Like, I would be in all kinds of areas when I would take walks in the forest in my mind.
You're not supposed to be, but...
In my mind.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually doing anything wrong.
No.
So Goosebumps to me was that when I was a kid. I used to read all the books. I was obsessed with the covers of the books because I would always look at the covers and be like, oh, giant praying mantis. My favorite episode of the show is The Werewolf of Beaver Swamp, part 1 and 2. I watched that so many times as a kid. My mom and I used to pop that in and we'd have like a Friday night dinner or something and we would watch that. I'm not even kidding. It was just a lot of fun for me, and I've always enjoyed that show, and I still enjoy it today. Episodes that are really good for this time of year are Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns, The Haunted Mask, and The Haunted Mask 2. It's a thing from my childhood, and if you haven't checked it out, you probably won't enjoy it as much if you didn't grow up with it, but for us... it's kind of fun. The next film on our list is probably the newest film that we're going to be talking to you guys about, and we have prepared a skit for you. Most of the films we're going to be talking about are slightly older, and this is one that came out that I personally really enjoyed, that I think is going to become something that people like to watch year to year. Mm-hmm. So please enjoy our skit. Insidious. James Wan directed this film on a budget of $1.5 million, and it made like $70 million or something worldwide, which is a crazy, crazy profit. And the sequel he made for just a little bit more and still made quite a bit of profit. That guy...
and it just came out, so it hasn't even topped its revenue possibly yet.
James Wan is a director who really understands how to use his budget. And one of the things I loved about Insidious was how practical it was in regards to the effects. There isn't any flashy computer effects in that movie, barely at all. There's maybe like one or two very noticeable visual effects shots. For the most part, the movie is all makeup and prosthetics, dolls and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that really bothered me about Insidious. Like the first time I saw it, it actually really disturbed me. And not just from a jump scare factor, it just kind of got under my skin.
I have to say, it's actually one of the few films that actually I was kind of freaked out when things popped out of the screen. Usually, I can sit through a film going, well... it's just a scary film. Usually in a film you can guess when things are about to happen.
Right.
But it's one of those films where you don't know. You just don't know if it's going to turn around and there's going to be something there. So it actually did catch me off guard in a couple of places where I was just like, what was that?
I think one of the best examples of that is when the family's sitting around the dinner table and the mother tells this story about a dream that she had where she goes inside Dalton's room and in there's that creature and points at Dalton. And then all of a sudden, it's just standing behind Patrick Wilson. To me, the first time I saw it in theaters, I was like,
I mean, it's such a freaky looking face.
it's like Darth Maul from Phantom Menace.
It's definitely one of those films that you will catch yourself off guard. Most scary films don't scare me, and if you can actually get a surprise out of me, good job, because
Nice.
I don't get scared very easily.
For me, Insidious just has this very creepy tone to it that I think is just absolutely perfect for October. It is the kind of movie that I can watch year-round and still enjoy, but for some reason, it just feels like the perfect October movie. And by the way, the composer of the score is actually the guy who plays the demon creature. I don't know if you knew that. He actually did all the makeup himself and everything. It was pretty cool, actually, the way they did that. But
That is kind of cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. The next film we are introducing to you is The Shining. One of the films I actually just had a chance to watch. Again, I haven't seen it in years, and I actually completely forgot what was in it. And I was like, how did I forget this? How did I forget this? It's such a suspenseful film. It gets under your skin in a couple places.
it really does. Stanley Kubrick, as a director, was notoriously particular about the way he shot his films. He made Jack Nicholson do the famous "Here's Johnny" take. I think the number is almost 200. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was like 170 something. He put his actors really through the ringer, especially Shelley Duvall in the movie. If you watch the making of The Shining, she hated working on that movie. And you can really see it in her performance too. And I think that's what Stanley Kubrick was trying to do, because what I heard was that he gave Jack Nicholson like every leeway possible. And he was just on Shelley Duvall all the time. And I think what he was trying to do was actually make Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall at odds, so that their performance would actually show that, because that's what the movie is really all about. Is once they get in that hotel and it starts to affect him as a couple, they start to go farther and farther apart. But oh my god, the cinematography in that movie is immaculate. It's one of the best frame movies I've ever seen. I've seen the movie like 3 times, but when I was watching it with her again, I was pinned to my seat. Like, I'm not even kidding. I was just, it's so
You're
well
focused
done.
in on it. And I have to say, I don't know how the kid did not win an award for his acting. One of the best actors in the entire film.
He really did a great job, and that is saying a lot for me, because I have a bit of a pet peeve with child actors sometimes. He did such a good job in this movie. The scene where he's on his three-wheeler and he sees the 2 twins, that famous scene in the hallway. The reaction on his face, it was just, he did such a great job in that movie.
His voice, his face, everything. He was just, it was spot on for what the film needed. From how the book was to the movie, it's kind of not the same. Usually disappointed by that thing, but I'm actually still happy with this film, even though it's not like the book.
It's one of the few adaptations of Stephen King's work that he is not pleased with, actually. And it's funny because it might be the best. That and Shawshank Redemption are maybe the best film adaptations, in my opinion, of his books. I understand, though, why he said, because like you said, it does stray from the novel. But the thing about The Shining, to me, but let's just forget about the great cinematography, the great performance by Jack Nicholson, the iconic great performance by Jack Nicholson. It's the feel and tone of the movie, because even from the beginning of the film, you get like this odd sense that it's just off. And if you watch the documentary Room 237, which I got a chance to see this year, I didn't get a chance to review that, but it's all about the making of The Shining and people's theories about the whole moon landing and everything, which is really interesting. If you guys have not checked that out, it was a very good documentary. The thing that Stanley Kubrick was trying to create from the beginning of that movie was an extreme sense of unease, where you just felt like, this isn't right. Like, everything just feels not right. And it gets all the way to the end of the movie, where you see the guy in a bear costume giving a blowjob to the guy in the bed, and you're like, what? That's one of the biggest WTF moments in movies of all time. But then you learn that there were costume parties there, and you're like, she was seeing a ghost of something that happened in the past.
Yeah, the drive up the mountain is disturbing. The actual hotel, when you first walk in, is disturbing. The way the staff acts is almost kind of on a disturbing level. It's just, every bit of the film puts you in that edge. It just makes you on edge.
Mrs. Torrance. Red rum.
Red rum.
Very scary, very disturbing, and it's also a film that film enthusiasts can really enjoy, because it's the type of movie that people who are into directing or cinematography or writing, you can watch that movie and you can just examine the hell out of it.
It's
and
beautiful. I remember sitting and watching it and going, oh, this room isn't done in just like primers. Every bit of this film, if you stop and actually watch it, is primary color over primary color, or if it's not a primary color, it's pretty much just the whole room is that color, with just little bits and accents of other colors, and it just makes for a beautiful shot because you're visually more interested in the characters. The stuff in the background just kind of fades into that one color.
Sure.
So all you see are the people and the action going on in front of that color. Like the red room or the blue room or the green room or the gold room. It's just like that's all you see.
The last film we're going to be talking about is another film that we have prepared a skit for you for. This is a film from the 90s. It's a film that kind of parodied the horror genre a little bit. It's a little meta, and it's got a lot of good in-jokes in there, but it's also a pretty entertaining movie, so please enjoy our skit.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Who is this?
What are you doing tonight, honey?
About to watch Bats.
Bats? Why in the living hell would you watch that movie?
Well, who doesn't like Bats? It's a fabulous film.
Kids these days.
Oh, my popcorn is ready.
So anyways, I was saying, what's your favorite scary movie?
Well, the scariest is certainly Dragon Ball Evolution.
You ever mention that film again, I'll cut your throat, you little bitch!
Like, seriously, is this Mark or Chris?
No, this isn't Chris. This is the guy that's gonna take a knife and spread your insides all over your kitchen. Speaking of your kitchen, you shouldn't leave your microwave door open.
What do you mean? You know, Mark, I really don't appreciate being messed with. You might be dating my best friend, but that doesn't give you the right to be an asshole to me. Good boy.
I'm so telling the teacher when I get to school on Monday, though.
Oh my god, this is such bullshit.
You can cut the theatrics. Like, it's so 1980s, the scary voice you're trying to pull. Ugh.
That little bitch made me think of Dragon Ball Evolution. She's going to die.
Scream, directed by Wes Craven. This movie came out in 1996, and a lot of people looked at this movie when it first came out and were thinking, okay, it's another slasher horror film, and it has all that in there, but it also has a great sense of making fun of it, but not in like the scary movie sense where it's just a giant spoof.
Definitely not a scary movie
No.
sense.
It just had all of the different tropes that horror films always have, where, oh, you don't want to have sex because then you're going to die.
It makes fun of the cliches.
One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Neve Campbell is on the phone and she's like, if I was in one of those movies, I couldn't act and I'd have big old boobs. And it was just like, yeah, that's pretty much how most of them go nowadays. And that's one of the things that I really liked about Scream, because I have seen quite a bit of terrible horror films. In fact, I'm going to be talking to you guys about some of those in a couple days here. I'm going to be doing a video on the worst horror remakes and sequels. And I have been rewatching some of them so that I can prepare. And wow, there really are some terrible ones. And Scream pokes fun at a lot of them in the best types of ways, because it's actually able to present a pretty entertaining movie as well. Because like the entire finale is like 35 minutes long in this one house. And I really enjoyed it. Like, I was actually on edge and getting into it. Even though I've seen it before, I watched it again about a week ago to prepare. Mm-hmm. But it's not just the fact that the movie, as I said, is a fun film that makes you go, yeah, that's pretty much how all these stupid horror movies are. It does have a good sense of actual horror in it as well.
It does, because the body count is pretty high once you actually start to think about it.
Definitely. That classic opening with Drew Barrymore that you yourself parodied very well.
Yeah.
So guys, that is part one of our scary movie special. There are, I'm sure, some films you're like, why didn't you talk about those films? They may be in part two, or maybe we're not going to talk about them at all. I apologize if your favorite films aren't on our list. Also, thank you very much for submitting footage to the Ring skit that will be in part two. You guys have submitted some really cool footage, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. That's going to be up on Sunday, and thanks, Sam, for being in this video with me, and I appreciate that as well. You're a good person.
Good person.
She's a good person. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, if you like this, you can click right there and get Stuckmanized. Do you want to go get something to eat?
What should we get?
Pumpkin pie.
It requires me baking.
You're a woman.
Excuse me?
Let's go get some pumpkin pie.
Oh, okay. So I get to go make a pumpkin pie.
Come on.
Oh. Okay, honey, changed. It's time for pie. Now, do we have anything for pumpkin pie? Because I think we have apples.
Yeah, I think I set a bag over there by the window. Can you check?
Oh. Let's pass these away. Hey, hon. Who's that?
There's a guy out there?
What do you think he wants?
I think he wants to be in part 2.